Hi, it's Courtney and welcome back. Thanks for joining me for my first project as one of the newest design team members of For Scrappin' for Less. I'm using the stamp set by Sunny Studio, City Streets. When I first got this stamp set, I knew immediately I wanted to make a scene. I love making clean and simple cards. So I wanted to make just that, a city street. I started off by using a pencil and my T-square ruler to kind of map out where my road and where my sidewalk would be, using my mast just to make sure I would have enough room for those larger buildings. I stamp my images using Lawn Fawn's Jet Black ink because it is Copic safe, and I'm stamping on 80-pound Neenah Solar White cardstock. For my larger images, I used full sticky Post-it notes, and for my smaller images, I'll be using liquid Frisket with just a cheap, inexpensive paintbrush. Once all my images were stamped and masked, I went over those pencil lines with a Copic Safe pen. In this case, I'm using a pen by Cricut. These are all Copic Safe. I added another line right below that sidewalk line just to make it look like a curb. I masked above where my road is, and I'll be doing some ink blending here with Hickory Smoke Distress ink. Once that was done, I went ahead and masked out the sidewalk, and I'll be using Tumbled Glass Distress ink for my sky. Next, I added the top line for my sidewalk and began adding some diagonal lines to just have those lines in the sidewalk. For the curb, I'll make those straight, and I just did those freehand. For the Copic coloring, I started out by just adding my shadows underneath the car and that little scooter on the side of the road. I'm using my C markers and I'm just blending those out. You can go over Distress ink with Copics without having it smear or bleed. For my sidewalk, other than the shadows on those little images, like those little planters and the mailbox, I didn't do any other shading. I just used my C1 marker to fill that in. This is actually the second time I began making this card. The first time I started out with a light source in the top left corner and pretty quickly realized that that didn't really look right, especially with the buildings. So this time I'm using a center light source. It makes it a lot easier. For all the buildings, I kept it pretty neutral. The little awnings, I added some color along with the signs for the cafe and the boutique and the bakery. But the buildings themselves, I kept them pretty neutral. I'll show you here the first one that I colored, and then I'll skip the second and third one. The Copic marker colors that I'm using, I will list in my blog. Once all my coloring was done, I decided to add the sentiment to the lower right corner. I'll be using VersaFine Onyx Black ink for the sentiment. Just keep in mind that this is a pigment ink and it does take a few minutes to dry. You won't want to touch it or smear it before you add it to your card base. And that's it. Thanks so much for stopping by.